Okay for the occupants? Have they been, yeah? Does anybody want to share that? Not really?
I got a call from a homeowner after it been in for one winter season because their electric bills were so high. It kept shutting down, and then the backup electric heater was running, which actually wound up using way more electricity than.
Not so efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say the load calcs have been all over the place, cause we've been trying to research since they're coming up, and, you know, being able to provide solar to accommodate that has been tricky, cause
Yeah.
what they say they do and what they actually do are not
Right.
necessarily the same thing.
And that's another important point about the code, as I think as you're gonna find with any new code, any new adoption, there's gonna be things like that aren't right, that don't work, you know what I mean? And then it takes that time to get it written in later to fix whatever mistakes that they made, thinking like, oh, heat pumps are the answer and this is great, it's gonna be, and then apparently there are issues. I've also heard of a few other issues too. That's why I was just wondering if anybody else had any problems with those. I've seen quite a few going in. I guess I haven't heard more negative feedback than positive, but it's kind of hard to say too. We're still pretty new with the technology and everything. So.
I know I've heard of a few situations, and one including when I put in my own house, and during the winter for heating, it goes through this, you know, I'm not an HVAC guy, but it goes through this regen cycle to defrost the condenser outside, and it sounded like a waterfall in my wall. It was really that, enough to wake me up. And I know two other clients, cause I did the disconnects for them, and they were complaining of the same situation.
Right.
I believe Tim actually had to change his whole house out because it did the same thing.
It was kind of manufacturer specific, I think, but also a little bit on the design. So we swapped it out and much better.
Right. Okay. But you're still using heat pump technology. Okay.
But rather than one big one, we used two small ones.
Right.
Because the house turned out to be really efficient, so it didn't call for enough heat. So, I mean, I relate it to like, it's buying a diesel truck and driving at 10 miles per hour. It's just not happy doing that. And so that's the way this large unit ran. It just wasn't happy running at a really low efficiency in a sense.
I'm kind of dealing with the same thing with one right now. It's a big unit and a multi-head, but it just doesn't seem to be able to keep up. It's not
Well, see,
efficient.
I
It
didn't
runs
have-
all the time.
Yeah, there was not a heat problem, it had plenty of
Yeah.
heat, but it would do, like,
Yeah.
about every 20 minutes, it would,
Mhm.
it sounded like it exploded. It
Yeah.
would build up this pressure because there wasn't enough heat being called
Right.
for the 8 heads.
And I haven't noticed it with single head units.
Yeah,
You know, they seem to be producing okay.
yeah.
But the multi-heads, even if you've got a 17-ton compressor out there, it just doesn't seem to be able to keep up.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's definitely problems with them. It sounds like there could be some solutions as well. So that might be something that we want to look into talking about. I'm gonna reach out to a few presenters that I know, and we've got some other options as well, and some other folks kind of poking around on you know these kind of things. Heat pumps might be something we're talking at least half the time maybe. I think it might be worth it. So, but yeah, like I said, I mean sometimes this new equipment it seems like the wave of the future, and the next thing you know, not so much. That didn't work out so well. And I'm not saying that's what's happening with heat pumps. It's just that happens with some things. A big one that I get a lot of questions about is blower door and duct testing. When and where and why it's required and all those good things. You guys, everyone's been breezing right through that easily. Oh, okay. Well, great. I guess maybe I answered the questions correctly. And then another thing that we want to kind of look at is issues that you know, as my staff, Rachel staff, you know, as the top 10 issues that we run into in plan submission, and what issues you guys have seen in trying to get the plan submitted. I know the manual J DNS can be tricky depending on the type of unit you have. You guys run into anything else that's hard with our application process, getting that for the energy code specifically? All of it?
Back here, Chad.
This doesn't necessarily have to do with the building department, but we have had some issues with it getting kicked back between zoning and building several times before it actually lands at someone's desk, and so I think that could be a better application process, like this goes first to zoning, and I know it's hard with the towns too, so you have either town of BV first or city of Salida, and then it comes to you guys, and so just having that set process and knowing whether or not it's gonna go to zoning, because some don't need to go to zoning and end up falling into the zoning review and then come back to you guys. It just seems to make the process a little longer.
Well, everything has to go to zoning. We installed that policy some time ago because of that issue. Because of that issue, so either one way or not, I mean, if it's nothing they need to look at and it's a quick review form, then great, send it along to the next, to the building department, you know. And is that just for energy stuff or just overall?
No, overall,
Okay.
like, it'll be again, back to remodels, I feel like those are always the ones that get a little bit
confusing.
confusing, but yeah.
But from personal experience, I've run into trouble not putting something in zoning and then finding out later after it was done and built that it was supposed to go to zoning. So it's not up to me to determine whether or not zoning is looked at, that's their determination. If they're happy with the submittal, and it's an easier interior remodel, give us the Johnny Hancock and let's move on with it, you know. And that's what we try to institute. I know it gets a little confusing, sometimes there's different requirements. And with this EV stuff that's coming up, and it's basically the state passed legislation where in land use codes now you have to have the EV charging as well, not just the model codes. So there has to be, you know, a plan for actual land use and EV charging as well. So I've actually run into it where there's a submittal where they thought they met everything because they had some EV charging there per the town's requirements for their land use code, but however, they did not meet the model electric code, so I had to kick those plans back, and I felt kind of bad for it, but that's kind of why we're trying to do this, to help with some of that stuff, to know that like, hey, we've got all this stuff, we've got to look at all these submissions, and we need to get it all together. Before we get it to us, that'll be the quickest review for everyone on this project.
Chaffee, the land use code, is zoning gonna be looking at compliance for that, or you guys?
Well, they're gonna be looking at the compliance for their land use code portion of it. So I'm gonna be looking at compliance for the building meeting the model solar ready and electric ready code, and obviously range one and the other residential plans. But yeah, zoning will have their own EV requirements. And you know, and a lot of it may be for like larger scale land use projects, kind of things like that. But yeah, they're gonna have their own requirements. I would say once they get it ironed out as to how exactly they're going to do it, because it's still in the process now. I'm actually having a meeting scheduled next week with them to help input whatever. I'm gonna try to make it as streamlined as I can, and hey, we're requiring this. So zoning and building are kind of on the same page. Because that's where we really run into trouble, is when the land use code says one thing, the building code says another thing, and it just doesn't work right. But that's the way it's always been, and that's the way it's probably always going to be. And I can't explain to you why that is. So I'm sorry if that was coming to the point. Okay, so then the next thing would be, we kind of covered all that. We could do some major changes from the previous code. Are we all pretty much caught up on that though? And then the application of scope. So, in talking to one of the contractors that we've been working with, you know, it seems important to include some education on the application of the scope of the energy code, because the scope of the energy code actually doesn't align with the scope of the residential or the building code. So it kind of changes a little bit. Some of the definitions are a little different. So it's kind of worth knowing that going into an application or a project, that what the scope actually is of your project. Then we have the model electric solar ready code. Obviously, we've already decided that's gotta be a whole workshop. Comchecks. Has anybody been using Comchecks in their submittals? Sarah has, great. I've seen a few of those. Yeah, it's a really useful tool, and it can be part of one of the compliance modules anyway. So that might be something worth learning more about if anyone has any interest in anything like that. And then obviously the sustainability portion of the energy code, compliance pass we already had on there, I'm sorry, I jumped in on that, and then we had the manual GDNS. Is there anything else you guys is itching at your brains about this energy code?
I haven't seen where you've addressed anything about windows and doors.
Have I seen?
I haven't seen.
Oh, in here, yeah. We can absolutely do something
Because
about
that's a large portion of the energy code that
It
just
is.
went out.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just curious to know what Chaffee County's position is on that.
Well, so when we adopted this 2021 energy code, we had to adopt it in its entirety. So if it's in that code book, we adopted it, and that was per state legislation. So, but yes, you're right, fenestration is a huge part of it. And actually, when you get into some of the other compliance paths, fenestration plays even more of a role in that. And then, you can bounce the values, and there's all sorts of tools and things you can do in there with the fenestration. So that could actually be a good topic.
Yes,
as well.
What about the latest legislation that got passed about implementing Energy Star 7 for Windows that got, I understand, passed and then kinda
Did they
put on the back
held
burner?
it on or something? Yeah.
It-
So
it-
I heard about that when they were putting it through, and we were kind of looking into that. I don't know, has that fully been passed yet?
I understand it was passed and signed and they figured out it doesn't work for high altitude, so they kinda revised it. or-
Probably try to leave that alone until,
And January 1st, I got adopted.
until we get the full, however they're gonna try to work it out. I do remember that though, and I thought the expense of the windows was gonna look.
Oh, yeah, you have to like painting on everything.
Yeah.
A lot of that was modified and negotiated down. They were asking for 0.26 for a UVAC factor, and they got knocked down to 0.3. So that's a little bit more, the manufacturers were happy about that, because more windows would conform.
Yeah, and that does meet what the,
Excuse me?
climate zone, that does meet what the energy code has for, at least if you're using prescriptive. So that makes more sense to me too. I don't know why we wanna overdo it, but yeah, I mean, I think they found that windows are a major source of leakage. You have your solar heat gain and everything coming through there. I mean, there's a lot with windows, you're right, that is a great topic that we kind of forgot on this. We kind of put this together, but that's a big part of today is to, get what you guys are thinking, what you wanna learn about, what we wanna set up presentations for, or bring in some specialists, far more knowledgeable than myself about it, and go from there. I know how to do plan review when I have the code book in front of me and I can look through it, I can't just present it to you, I'm really not a great presenter, so as you can tell. So we're gonna bring in some help for that, because we have the means to do so. Yeah, great, so all those fenestration we got added on there. I think that kind of covers most of what everybody was thinking, for the most part, seemed good. Now, is there anything else? I guess that pretty much covers it, I'm sorry. And then we do have this for the future timing topics, and then call for presenters. Now, the call for presenters is, I was gonna possibly reach out to a local blower door testing and duct testing person, just to kind of explain some of that to us a little better. It doesn't seem like you guys have much interest in that, though. Is that not been an issue? It's been pretty easy to deal with.
I think it would be beneficial.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think honestly, any of these topics would be beneficial, and there's probably about another 20 that we're not even thinking about that would also be beneficial. So yeah. So
It would be helpful to know what exactly, it seems like there's a lot of different scenarios with different heat systems where who knows what needs to be capped and what needs to be tested on the blower door.
yeah,
It's
I've seen a lot of confusion with when to do it, and so I know people that have done it after drywall, and then they had a leak and they were cutting drywall out. So obviously, I'd say that's not a good plan. But you obviously should have all your air seasoning done. It's kind of a tricky when the best time to actually implement those tests would be. That's one, and then for additions, we've had some confusion with that, which honestly the code exempts additions from needing that testing, so that's pretty simple answer there. I just know it seems like every day there's a different question that I didn't think of that someone comes up with that, we have to look into and be like, oh, well, it doesn't make sense there. It really kind of just what makes sense for your project, you know, what's gonna work best for you and how you're most successful with it.
I don't know if this falls for other people as well. For solar, a lot of times we have to derate the equipment because of altitude and things like that. Do other people run into that, and how do you know your equipment is within the code just based on, I don't know, it's just sometimes challenging.
I mean, like as far as like windows or?
No, just like batteries, things like that, we have to derate and change settings and things because of altitude. And I just wasn't sure if there was, other people run into that with other appliances and things like that.
There are other mechanical appliances that do need to be set for altitude depending on, you know, usage and manufacturer and all that stuff, so. I mean, I've seen some, most of what's sold, at least semi-locally, is already fitted for this altitude, but there is sometimes that it does have to be, you know, I don't know if I call it derating, but just, you know, so. We don't have any mechanical contractors in here.
You guys don't need to be here.
Anybody got to show up to their job? Yeah, because that would be, like I said, the mechanical plays a huge part in the energy code. That's a big chunk of it for sure. That efficiency comes from obviously higher heat and efficiency of that. So, I believe this is the last.
Yeah, and if folks want to hit that QR code, we do have it's like a quick survey, like 5 questions, just to get your like top 5 rankings for some of those topics that we just talked about, and to get input like, is 3 p.m. on a Tuesday a good time to meet up? Is after work better for you guys? What day of the week? That sort of thing. So it should only take like a couple minutes to fill out, but if you don't mind grabbing that, we'll send it out by email too, but you can do it right now while we're chatting, while it's top of mind, and then that'll give us some guidance for the next presentations. Thanks.
I'll vote for my top 5 too. Any other topics of discussion anybody wants to bring up while we're all here? Anything going on out in the wide world?
It's quite a bit different than on this energy stuff, but do you think we might be able to hear some more about the WUI requirements?
So that's gonna have to be a separate.
Yeah, okay.
Real quick though, I think we
Yeah.
met our hour pretty close.
Yeah,
So
we
I'll just
got
go quick.
totally.
So actually what we're looking at doing is, in talks with the fire districts, we have 2 separate fire districts in Chaffee County, and then also the municipalities. We're looking at adopting the Colorado State Wildfire Resiliency Code in lieu of the Iowa code. We're still gonna add in amendments that the fire districts want in there, but the fire districts feel like if we get on the state code, they're gonna have more support from the state for basically enforcement of that code and education of the code too, because they are offering some free education. So we are gonna get more into that. I'm working on writing the amendments right now to that code. Technically, we're slated to adopt it in April, on April 1st and 26th. However, since we already have the 2021 International Wildland Urban Interface Code adopted, I think I could probably stretch that a little bit. We're mandated to be compliant in by July 1st with the state code. But we've already got that compliance factor. We're just gonna move over to the state map. We're gonna move over to the state code. It's just a little more streamlined, and to the point, and we can tailor the fire districts, you know, and the building department can tailor a little more to what the county needs and what's working and what's not working kind of as well. As we've been implementing the 2021 for a little while now, there's a few things that have come up. I will say the products have gotten a little better. When we first adopted, there was nothing available that wasn't cancer causing or some kind of horrible chemical thing. So I do know there's been some steps forward in the products being able to be used for hardening structures and protecting that. So there will be some other stuff coming up on that. This is mainly the energy code, obviously, but yeah, that's what we're focusing on. So anything else?
I think the last slide has some resources on it. Again, we're partnering with the Colorado Energy Office, and they have quite a bit of information, toolkits online, webinars you can attend, that code helpline, and various things. So
Yeah, the toolkit's really useful. It has a lot of really good information. The helpline is just, questions.
Will this be sent out in an email?
yeah, we'll email it out too. Yep.
Is the helpline actually somebody that you give me homework about? Some of the stuff is
Yes, kinda. Yeah. There's a lot of information. Like I said, the state is very energy savvy, and I mean, it makes sense. So, but yeah, and like I said, it's just going to continue to move forward. So, I don't know exactly which iCode we would adopt next. Not having the 27 out yet. Not knowing what's going on there, but at that time when it gets to when we need to adopt, we'll take a look at which work best for us. Usually, now to jump to the 21, they really added a lot of stuff in there, and it was so much where they kind of reeled it back in 24, because there's just a lot. There's just a lot of stuff in there. So I don't know if the 27 would even be more refined at that point, you know what I mean? In theory, you would think it would be, but that's not always the way the codes are written, so it's hard to say. But. Cool.